Hey everybody, welcome to the Brownie Points Podcast, week number 5. The Browns get the win over the San Francisco 49ers. Big upset. We're going to get first into the big takeaway from the game, what our overall thought is. Then we're going to get into the offense. We'll discuss and touch a little bit on the coaching battle between Kevin Stefanski and Kyle Shanahan, how each of them did in this game. Then we'll touch on the defense, and then we're going to get into our Brownie Points segment, where we award basically points to the best players, the standouts on offense and on defense. Let's get into it with our big takeaway from the game. The Browns get a win. Huge surprise. I didn't see it coming. You didn't see it coming. Let's be honest. None of us saw it coming. We hoped for it. We wished for it. But I don't think we saw this coming, especially with the backup quarterback, backup quarterback arguably, although probably PJ and DTR are kind of probably backup 1A, backup 1B. Don't have Nick Chubb, so...
There was one guy at the baby shower I got roped into who did see it coming. So.
Oh, really? Okay, there you go. Yeah. What's your big takeaway from this game?
My big takeaway is season saver. Season saver. I feel things could have gotten really bad after this week if there had been another loss, especially if it had been the way a lot of us saw it going, a 14-plus point loss. Even if they didn't get decimated, embarrassed the way the Cowboys did, but, handled. And it would just be another loss. You'd be 2-3. You'd be thinking, here we go again. You're not sure when your quarterback's coming back. There's some animosity, probably, if I had to guess, conjecture, but going on in the locker room, him not starting and guys feeling like we're out here and he's not. We're playing through burns and injuries and he's not. And all of a sudden things can get really dark and can go down to a tough place. And we've seen Stefanski not always do the best in pulling teams out of that kind of mindset. And so it was starting to get a little nerve-wracking. It felt like things could very suddenly go downhill. Momentums apply in the NFL when it comes to games, but also seasons. And this did feel like a big saver. It doesn't guarantee anything, certainly, but it did feel like a big stopgap from things going down a very dark tunnel. Pulling things out, it's a team win. It's a definition of a team win. Kind of everybody chipping in to make it happen. And they found a way to beat a team that was way better. Just be honest, it's a considerably better team, and they found a way to win anyway. So maybe not everything went perfectly according to plan, but when you're playing somebody that much better, you're probably going to need a little help. But they made it work, and they pulled it out anyway, and that was awesome, and probably, again, like I think, season-saving.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. This could have gone downhill really quickly after a game like this, and seeing yourself at 2-3 is a really different feeling than from seeing yourself at 3-2. For me, my big takeaway from this game, despite us beating arguably the best team in the league, this game is not the blueprint, and that's kind of my big takeaway. Even though we won against the best team in the league, this can't be the blueprint. What the Browns are trying to do is what we've seen teams do in the past is when you have that, teams usually do this with a bridge quarterback, or if you had a backup quarterback who's going to be in there for a longer period of time, your goal is to get a lot of field goals, you get some movement, you get some trick plays maybe in there. You basically have to manufacture your offense, and you rely on a stout defense to keep the scoring low, keep you in the games right up until the end, give yourself a shot. The Browns succeeded defensively in that regard. However, I think throwing 2 interceptions is unacceptable, and that kind of thing is not going to work in the future. Like if we do this week over week, we have this great Browns defensive performance, but PJ Walker throws 2 interceptions every week, we're probably going to lose more games than we win. And yes, we won this game against, they know is the best team in the league, but they probably should have hit that 41-yarder. The reality is the Browns probably should have ended up losing that game. Maybe they didn't deserve to lose. They were great defensively for most of the game. But the fact is, you expect the team to hit a 41-yarder, and they kind of squeaked out with one. They got a little bit lucky. And in the future, you're probably not going to get lucky. Even the worst team in the league is going to hit a 41-yarder more often than they're not going to hit a 41-yarder. So despite them beating the best team in the league, this game can't be the blueprint. PJ Walker has got to cut down on those interceptions. He's going to get one, probably. But ideally, we kind of have to be at 0. We don't have a large margin for error when we don't have a top-end potential when it comes to the offense. So defense, great overall. But from PJ Walker, I think I want to see him be a little bit better with protecting the ball. So that's my big takeaway is PJ Walker needs to protect the ball a little bit better, and the Browns need to improve on the blueprint of manufacturing offense and a stout defense at least for the next few weeks. I mean, we don't know when Deshaun Watson's coming back because apparently nobody knows. They won't tell us. They won't tell anybody. I don't know what's going on there.
A lot of rumors going on with that.
Yeah, but the team's going to have to be a little better, I think, in the coming weeks, even though it worked against the best team in the league. And getting into that, the offense overall as a whole scored 19 points. What are your overall feelings from the Browns' offensive performance?
Yeah, what I really liked was seeing the run game do a lot better, which I thought was interesting considering they had kind of struggled in that the last few weeks. But this week they actually faced a much better defense. I think, first of all, there was more of a commitment to the run game and not giving up on it, which I think is very helpful. And the run game showed up. And that's a good defense. That's a really good Niners defense. And you didn't have Batonio, and yet it worked out better especially later in the game, which took more carries, but it worked. You've got to stay a little patient with it, and I think that showed. And I hope Stefanski remembers to stick to it a little bit sometimes. You're not always going to have Nick Chubb numbers, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't stick with it as long as it's not a disaster and things can play out. But, yeah, overall, I think the offense, I liked the adjustment. It's definitely off a bye week, so it's not as exciting as if it had just happened, which would have been like, whoa, big moment for Kevin Stefanski. Still, it's good he at least made those adjustments and prepared an offense that looked a lot better suited to a backup than we obviously saw against the Ravens. The offense, like I said, the run game was there. Jerome Ford had just some really, really big moments when it mattered, which is really interesting because we hadn't really seen him in clutch situation per se. This is kind of a clutch situation, and you saw him really step up and be the drive. Like, he was that drive. So that was huge and really, really good to see from him. I mean, Cooper did what Cooper does. Not a lot out of the receiver still. It was just Cooper and assorted. You did see Njoku step up and make some plays. Some got called back, unfortunately, because of penalties. But I would like to see even more utilization of a guy who just, it feels like every time he touches the ball, makes things happen. Yeah. Burns, no burns, doesn't matter. He's just really good. He's a mismatch. He is a mismatch. So, like, utilize him. And I would like to see more of that. I still want to see even more because he's just that good. I know.
It feels like every time he's been touching the ball this season, more often than not, he's making a significant play.
Yeah, 100%.
And he's utilizing his speed and athleticism. I would love to just see him in the open field more, using those talents that he has because he's so athletic and so much speed.
And when you have a mismatch like that, it can open up the rest of your offense. Because when you have that, then they all of a sudden have to pull linebackers off to cover him or a safety, whoever their best cover man is usually. And that requires them, that takes either away from the line of scrimmage or it takes away from, if it's a safety, it takes up more from help off the top. It can completely change a game. You saw the Ravens do that to us. With Lamar, JOK had to play in at the line, and then Mark Andrews burned us all game. Well, we didn't have Lamar this time, so we did a better job on Kittle, but
yeah, much better job. Yeah,
the point
Kittle
is that
didn't do much at all.
Yeah, he didn't at all, which was phenomenal. And you can see that because that's what happens, right? You get one thing to go off, and sometimes Lamar doesn't go off, so we think Lamar's not a problem, but really he pulls someone else off, and then you have that one guy causes a problem, and then you're pulling in, and then Zay Flowers just gets a couple more plays, and all of a sudden you're in trouble. If you can find a weakness in a defense, it can suddenly make everything move because they have to adjust, and that allows everything else to flow from there. So it's really important to cover all your bases on that, and that's why I think a guy like Njoku could make such a difference for us. He is, I think, of that talent. Like, he's that caliber. If you use him properly, it can help you crack some of those tough defenses and make them move, and then you can make your moves based off of what they do to adjust to Njoku. So absolutely, they need to use him even more.
Yeah. Speaking about how you use your players, do you think the Browns won this coaching battle? Because for me, I think we did. I'm not going to say Kevin Stefanski coached the greatest game in the world, but he did make adjustments. The offense looked like it was a bit more fit and suited for a backup quarterback, for a quarterback of PJ Walker's talent level. I think Kevin Stefanski won the coaching battle isolated, obviously in a vacuum, in this game specifically.
I would say he did, but we'll say part of that is because I thought Shanahan lost the battle. So I think that plays a role in it, absolutely. I do also think part of the coaching battle that was won wasn't just Stefanski. I think it was Schwartz. I think he really got his defense gassed up to play. And they really showed it. And they had some brilliant calls to stop a defense. You can say what you want. The Cowboys are a really good defense, and they could not slow them down. Yeah. So they had faced good teams. This is a good offense. I know people don't like Purdy, and I get it. Maybe he's not as good as he seems at times because it helps. But he's also a guy who's still consistently just been knocking teams up and takes advantage of every opportunity. And he didn't take advantage of every opportunity in this game. And there were a lot less opportunities this game. This defense really showed up. It showed a faith by going to man, which was absolutely the right call when you have that talented of a secondary. Go man-to-man. Challenge them. Make him make those throws because you can do it. And I was glad to see them actually take advantage of it instead of just playing zone like they did a lot last year. It's, hey, we have the talent. We're going to force you to make the play. And we're going to believe in our very, very, very talented players to make those plays. And it really paid off. So that was huge. That's a part of the coaching battle. But look, Stefanski, he did make adjustments. It was solid. He did stick to the run. Later in the game, it definitely paid off. And he was solid. On the other hand, Shanahan made some stupid mistakes. I mean, the team didn't seem as gassed up. It felt like they kind of expected to win at times. Like, for example, not being able to capitalize on some of their interceptions. At the same time, the Browns didn't really on the Emerson interception. So there's that. But for a team as good as the Niners are, you'd expect them to capitalize when they get the ball right outside the red zone, and they didn't. So that's definitely a shot on him. And then at the end of the game, to just settle for a 41-yarder when you have almost 50 seconds, the play went out. Jawan Jennings went out of bounds. It was almost 50 seconds with the clock stopped at a 41-yard field goal. Well, it was a 44 because they had 1 3-yard run. And it's 49 seconds and you have a timeout. You're really just going to settle for one run and then spike it and then play it just so that and then bring down the clock to 9 seconds just so that in case there's a missed snap, I'd be more worried about being closer. And the crazy thing is if he would have made a better play on second down, he could have potentially still had the extra snap and had the extra snap. But the extra snap is much more rare. That almost never happens. How many times do you see wrong snaps on field goals? You're overthinking thinking about that when it's much more likely to see a rookie kicker miss a game-winning 41-yarder as opposed to a 32-yarder or a 30-yarder. And they were moving on us. It was scary.
Yeah. You just worried about the wrong thing, And, talking about defenses and talking about Kyle Shanahan, this Browns defense is looking not just great. This defense is showing some signs of perhaps having a historical year. I don't know if you saw the stat that the Browns, through week 5, have allowed less yards than any team in the NFL over the last 50 years.
That I have not seen.
Yeah, the team has been exceptional defensively. And to Jim Schwartz's credit, and part of the reason why you got to credit Jim Schwartz so much for this, is that the units are playing like a unit. But here's the next thing. You really feel like, and this is the first time I can say, at least that I remember, that I really feel this way, that every player on a side of the ball is having their potential maximized. I feel like this is a great version of JOK. We're seeing a good version of Myles Garrett. We're seeing a good version of Dalvin Tomlinson. We're seeing Denzel Ward playing at a great peak. We're seeing MJ Emerson playing quite nicely. We're seeing, he's still a rookie. We're seeing Greg Newsome playing well. We're seeing so much out of our players, out of our star talent. It's rare, at least for the Browns, that we see our coach get so much out of them. Usually we're used to watching our coaches mismanage our players, it feels like, more than anything. And finally we have a guy that's actually taking the strengths of our players and putting them in the best position to succeed. We have great man-to-man corners. Hey, how about run man-to-man and then utilize a great defensive line? And that also happens to be it fits Jim Schwartz's, philosophy anyways, how he wants to play. So it was a great fit. But all credit to him. This defense has been unbelievable. And without them, we definitely would not have won this game.
Now, side note on MJ Emerson, I just love him because he's good, but he's also that guy where they go, he's a great, tough physical corner, which means he's pretty good and he also gets a lot of flags. Yeah. Which is where you want to move on from the tough corner to being called the savvy corner, because that's the one who gets around without as much flags, gets away with contact. So on that angle, that's important. The other thing I will say is it's the first thing I can think of in a while where I felt the defense played really, really well, and Garrett didn't dominate. Yeah, I'm not saying he was bad, but he didn't dominate. But I still came away thinking the defense played really, really well. That has actually not happened in a long time. Yeah. It kind of went the way Garrett went.
Dalvin Tomlinson was unbelievable.
Oh, he's phenomenal.
He was in the backfield just constantly.
Interior pressure. It's a game changer. Look at the Eagles. You know why they've done as well as they have this year and why they've dominated and last year? interior pressure. When you have that level of interior pressure, it's hard to beat.
It's hard to do much of anything. I mean, right? They're right in your line of sight. They're coming at you. They're crashing right in front of you. It's really difficult. They were just unbelievable. It's not like the 49ers never were able to get anything going, at different points. They were able to put some drives together, put some plays together. It's not like nothing happened the entire game. But overall, again, we're playing a good team. You're playing Kyle Shanahan, who's considered an offensive savant. He's considered an offensive genius.
I'd still put him there.
What?
I'd still put him there.
Oh, no, I do. I agree. I'm just saying that, he's considered an offensive genius. It's not like we're playing, the Titans or something. No shot to Mike Vrabel, but he's considered more of a defensive guy, Yeah. So I was very happy. I was very happy, I got to say. And I was surprised and I was happy, which is so rare.
And just one last point, and it kind of ties back into my big takeaway, but finding ways to win is the sign of a winning team. It's very important to find ways to win. Go look at all the best teams. There are games where they win and they don't necessarily should win. It's not that you want to always win that way, but occasionally you have to. And in the past, we've always been on the losing side of those. Yeah. So it's good to see one where we came out winning when it wasn't such a pretty game. And maybe we shouldn't have, but we found a way to win. Yeah. That's what I want to see. That's something that hasn't happened here in a long time. So that was good to see.
Definitely positive to take away from this game. I think there were some, as you said, I think there were some cautionary tales to take away from, watching the interceptions, that last drive at the end of the game when the 49ers were making moves, maybe should have lost that game. So rolling into our Brownie Points segment, we're going to talk about the offense first, and then we'll move into the defense. Just for a reminder for any listeners, if you're new, we're going to give out 3, 2, and 1 Brownie Points to players on offense, and then 3 points, 2 points, and 1 point to players on the defense. It's basically our reward system, but we call it the Brownie Point system because it's more fun and it's in theme. So for 3 Brownie Points, who's your pick?
I'm giving it to Amari Cooper. I thought he was far and away the best player, probably for the Browns, period. Actually, maybe offense and defense, but definitely on offense. He made several big plays. He went for over 100 yards. He's a guy who's showing that it doesn't matter who you put behind under center, This year, he's getting 100 yards. It just feels like all the time. He just finds ways. He got really open, and then sometimes he went out there and made plays on balls that maybe weren't perfect, and he just found ways. He had that big 50-plus yarder when we really needed it, and it just felt like when you really needed him, he made those plays, and he gets open. It makes it easier. And sometimes he'll come back and just grab that ball away. And he did that again, and he just really showed how good he is and why he's so integral to this offense.
Yeah. I feel like Amari Cooper's had a jaw-dropping catch in every game of the season, I think. He's had at least one 50-50 ball that you're like, how did he come up with that? And Amari Cooper, one thing I love about Amari Cooper, and this is one of those things that's really special when you have that's how you know you have a real number one receiver, are those guys that they make these ridiculous sideline grabs, but keep both feet in bounds. How many times you see some... Whoops, I'm sorry about that. How many times do you see guys who are more in that second tier of receivers and they make these unbelievable catches but then wind up out of bounds? They don't have that toe drag swag. They don't have that. That's just that awareness, I think, that some of the superstars have to get their feet in bounds and that discipline in order to do that. Because, that's really tough to do. When you're making a catch like that and then to remember.
Well, that's the NFL. It's a meticulous game. It's a game of inches. So, and then that's why you see guys drop off so suddenly. Because when you're an inch off, if it's consistent, it's every play you keep losing because it's a game of an inch. It's a game of small movements.
Yeah, so it's not a very forgiving sport.
Yeah.
Moving into 2 Brownie Points. For myself, I have Jerome Ford. I believe we're in agreement with that.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we both had Jerome Ford at 2 Brownie Points for the day. Jerome Ford had a great fourth quarter. Really helped the Browns in the end of that game. Overall, I think he had 17 attempts, about 85 yards, but 4.9 per carry. It's good, solid performance from him. He wasn't blowing, our tops off or anything like Nick Chubb might have done, but overall, I think he was serviceable, and he came up when we needed it, which is the most important thing.
Absolutely. He did show a real clutch gene, which was nice to see. Something we hadn't really got a chance to see from him, and then we really got to see it. And, he was that last drive. He was it. He was 80% of the yards on that drive was him, just finding ways to just keep going and making some really nice plays. So that was great. It was fun to watch. It was good to see. It felt good about him being the scat back of the future, the compliment to Chubb. So that felt really good. Look, Hunt is what it is, but he is a rental. We all know it. It's good to see and figure, hey, when Chubb does come back, Ford is a really nice backup, and hopefully with the amount of time and the plays he's made, Stefanski will give him a fair amount of trust that I think he's earned. So absolutely, it's 2 for Jerome Ford, and then my 1, I still give it to PJ Walker. He definitely made some mistakes, or he would maybe be a 2 or a 3. Certainly a 2 was within range for him, but throwing 2 picks, he had that almost pick at the end of the game through just a poor decision. When you're in field goal range, and that will put you in for the win. You look for an end zone, sure. You don't settle for no reason, but when you see that much clogging, you don't just throw the ball in there and hope it goes in. It's not 4th down. Don't do that. So that was a mistake. But look, he came in back up, going up against the Niners, his first start in a while. He doesn't start every day. He didn't come into camp with this team. He's coming in there, doesn't have the most time to get used to this offense yet, and right away is against the Niners, the undefeated Niners, this amazing team, great defense, and he had some plays. Like, it wasn't amazing, but he made some big plays, dodged the pass rush a lot to avoid some disasters, and ultimately came up with a win in a tough environment, and just for that reason, I'm going to give him 1 star.
Yeah, I mean, he's no Patrick Mahomes, but you could tell that he was significantly more experienced than DTR was. The way he handled pressure in that game, I know he did those picks aside, he had mistakes. There's a reason why he's a backup quarterback. If he was flawless, he wouldn't be a backup. But flaws aside, overall, the big picture of that game, play to play, for the most part, the way he handled pressure and the way he took care of himself in the pocket, you could see the difference between him and a rookie like DTR. And who knows what DTR will be, maybe if he can calm down and relax a little bit, become more composed, go through his reads better. But, I just wanted to give some credit to PJ Walker there. And I wanted to say that because I don't have him at 1 brownie point. I think for me, he would have been there. I was overall liking what he was doing. Like I said, I saw significant improvements. When I was watching that game, I felt like, all right, like this could work. PJ Walker doing this. This is one of the best Browns defenses so far through week 5 in the history of the team. Who knows? Maybe they'll finish that as more in the history of the NFL top 10 defense, right? For as great as that was, those mistakes I think were too costly. I think they were too costly. The defense bailed him out on one of them, but the other one did turn into a touchdown, and then he almost had that one that would have cost us the game. Throwing that pick in that game, which easily could have happened. As far as his decision making was, that's a pick, right? The defense didn't quite get it, but as far as decision making goes, that's basically a pick, right? He was right there, and in that position, you can't have that. You can't have that. I mean, that turning over the possession is literally the worst thing that could happen. Sometimes taking a sack, knocks you out of field goal range. Even there, like if you had taken a sack, would have been fine. Like a sack would have been better than just throwing that ball into that tight of a coverage. So for that, the mistakes I think were too strong, having 3 of them. If you just had 1, fine. But 3 mistakes of that caliber, I can't give him 1. And so for me, and this is a little bit of a stretch, but I do want to give it to Njoku. He had 3 catches for 25 yards, nothing crazy, but he had that big play there, that touchdown play, which would have made that game a lot less close at the end. But he had that big touchdown play that got called back, but it didn't really affect the play that much. As far as his skill and his talent, he effectively did have a touchdown. So for me, I want to give him a little bit of a shout out because he played well with what he was given. So I want to give him that shout out for 1 brownie point. Additionally, there's not really that much else on the team. I mean, it wasn't exactly a spectacular offensive performance. So that's for me where I have that. Moving into the defense, who do you got at 3 brownie points? Who is your number 1 standoutiest player?
I'm going to give it to Dalvin Tomlinson.
Yeah, I think that's no question, right?
I just think he was everywhere. And maybe he doesn't have the stats, but he was consistently in the backfield. Did have a nice tackle for a loss, but also just in general, he was driving the plays. He was just always back there. He made a huge difference. He made Purdy constantly uncomfortable. He made the run game adjust a whole lot, leading to a whole bunch of big plays. He was the focal point of the defensive attack. And whenever you can get that much interior pass rush, right, that kind of interior pressure, it dramatically changes what you can do on defense. And it dramatically changes things, too, because you need less people in the pass rush. And, yeah, like typically defensive ends can get around on the edge. The problem is getting to the quarterback more directly. But a lot of times the offensive lineman will block them around the edge. So if you get pass rush from the interior, the quarterback has to split to one end, and also the defensive end who is getting blocked but coming around all of a sudden is in range to sack the quarterback or stop the running back. So that's huge, and Dalvin was consistently back there, showing what a major difference it is and what a huge signing that was. And how great it is that they finally addressed the defensive tackle position.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I have zero disagreements with you on that one. Dalvin Tomlinson was excellent. Best game as a Brown, I think, no question. He was the standout player for me as well at 3 brownie points. Number 2, as I think where you start getting to a point where it could go to different people. Who do you got at number 2 at 2 brownie points?
So I got JOK. He's a guy who's really, I mean, we talk about Dalvin Tomlinson, talking about people who really benefit from it. JOK has been a guy who's benefited from this defensive line and the coaching, and it's really showed up. Has a habit of showing up and making plays and just kind of causing a lot of problems, wreaking havoc wherever he goes. And it has felt like this linebacker room has been better in coverage this year. And I think a lot of this has been allowed by the defensive tackles. So obviously he gets that helps a lot. And then he's been shooting gaps, making plays, and just, again, he's just showing up, making big plays. That's the guy you were looking for. He's not the guy who makes a million tackles. He's the guy who will occasionally just pop up shooting gaps, making big plays, and changing the way the offense wants to play the game, and come up with those big plays that put the team back several yards and suddenly makes them recalculate how they're going to get a first down and give your defense opportunity to get some 3rd and long situations, get the offense off the field. So JOK just generally having a really good year, and that's showing today. So he gets 2 brownie points from me.
Yeah, another solid performance from him. I have him at 1 brownie point just because I have Denzel Ward at number 2. But on JOK, he already has more tackles for a loss this season than he did all of last year. Just for the record, I think he's got 8 tackles for a loss, I think, this year, and last year he had 7. So that's the kind of improvement that we want to see from JOK. I feel like we've talked about this in previous weeks, how we really feel like we're seeing what we saw from JOK at Notre Dame. I feel like we're really seeing it now. That potential is really coming out. And every game, he's getting a big tackle for a loss. Every game, I just see him just flying in there and making a big play. You're like, who was that? Like, oh, it was JOK. What a play. You know, I think that speed and power that he has is pretty fun to watch. I love it. But I did have him at 1 brownie point. I thought Denzel Ward was slightly better. I saw him, I mean, he was pretty good, I think, in coverage, but he also had a couple plays where they tried to hit Kittle. And Denzel Ward, I thought, did a nice job, even though he's not exactly the biggest corner in the world. But I thought he did a nice job just getting that ball away, not letting Kittle get involved. The defense as a whole did a good job, I think, just scheming Kittle out of it. But there was a play, I know for sure there was at least one play I remember where they targeted him, and I was like, why is Denzel Ward on Kittle? But okay. And Kittle did a great job in the coverage, not allowing him to complete that. I remember there being a deep ball throw that was really close to being completed. Denzel Ward did just enough to throw the receiver off so he couldn't make the play. And that's a really great heads-up play from Denzel Ward. He's got a lot of speed, but sometimes the other guy just got a little bit more. He had the edge on him, and Denzel Ward used a little bit of, I think, a little bit of veteran intelligence that he's been picking up. He's had some more years in the league, and just threw him off his game just enough. Just enough. So I thought that was a great performance from him. So I had him at number 2, and as I already said, I had JOK at number 1. At Denzel Ward at 2 brownie points. I had JOK at 1 brownie point. Who is your final shout-out?
So my final brownie point goes to MJ Emerson. First career interception this week. So that was nice to see. He's always been solid, but it's nice to see him get that pick. That's always a big difference maker. Has a pretty solid return on it, too. Puts him in good position. They may have failed to capitalize, but it's not his fault. I thought he played pretty well. He had some moments where he wasn't that great, but he had a big moment like that pick that, again, like when you put your team in that position, you've done your job. You set your team up to get offensive points off of defense, which in a game like this is huge. So he really made a huge play like that, and he's been playing pretty well this year, so I'm giving him the last brownie point.
Yeah, I think that's overall a good pick. He definitely had a decent game overall. I feel like this defense is almost more fun to watch than the offense.
Right now, yes.
Yeah. Let's look ahead to next week. I guess we're rolling with PJ Walker again.
Playing the Colts.
So I guess we're just going to assume that it's going to be PJ Walker. I mean, who knows? But again, we're going to assume it's PJ Walker. Looking ahead to the Colts, especially if they win against the 49ers, you got to be feeling pretty good. And I think that the energy in the Browns room is probably a lot more positive than it was coming into this game against the Niners. I think as fans, we got to be feeling pretty good. What are you expecting to see against that game, in that game against the Colts?
Well, the one thing is, don't let the emotions get the better of you. You have definitely seen teams come up with a big surprising win, and then they are almost emotionally drained when they come up to play that next game and lose a game they should win. You really still can't afford that. So be careful.
On a similar note, like on the flip side of that, look for the Niners to crush whoever they play next week.
Yeah, they
Good
might be
teams
really
after
nice.
they get embarrassed usually are obscenely good.
Like I expect the Cowboys before Monday Night Football. I expect the Cowboys to beat the Chargers tonight. I don't think the Chargers are all that great. I think the Cowboys need it after last week. They're going to come out tough. But that's a side note. However, the Browns can't overlook the Colts. Be careful about that. And I know the Colts did not look good this past week, but they played some pretty good games outside of that. They've come up with some wins when they've needed to. Gardner Minshew's not that bad.
Might be better than Anthony Richardson is at the moment.
Probably, yes. Zach Moss has played really well this year, and Taylor is back. So just be careful. It's a game you should win, but it's a game you could very well lose if you don't come in there with the right energy and take it seriously. Because they are still a pretty good team. They're not a team you can overlook, but they are a team that if you come in there and play it right and don't do stupid things and do it the way you should and take it as seriously as you should just go ahead and win that too.
Yeah. I think this game, like the Browns, especially as a defense, have the chance. If they come in with the right energy, the right mentality, they could really impose themselves on the Colts like maybe we haven't even seen all year. Like my prediction, for my scoreline prediction for this game, I don't think the Colts break 13 points. I'm not sure if they're going to say 10 or 13. I don't know, but I want to say 10 to 13 points for the Colts. And I want to say for the Browns, I think they're going to score about 17 to 20 points in this game.
Yeah, I'm going 20. I'm going more of like a 2013 type of game. And I'm also going to say we can't afford to lose this one. Be careful. The Bengals are starting to sneak now. They just beat the Seahawks. The Seahawks are a good team. Back-to-back wins, taking out the Seahawks, starting to look a lot better. And we know how dangerous the Bengals are. Like the Ravens, they beat the Titans, but Malik Willis was quarterbacking that team near the end. They were coming back on him up with Tannehill, and then Malik Willis had to take over. The Ravens have looked suspicious for a lot of this year. I know they did what they did to the Browns, but I've watched them, and they have been suspicious this year. I'm not as concerned about them, actually.
It's kind of a hot take.
I know it's not, but I picked the Steelers to beat them, and they did. The Steelers weren't great either. The Ravens, most games have not been good on offense. They've been a little shaky, and I think there's going to be quite a few games where it just doesn't quite roll their way. But the Bengals are sneaky, and if they really have found their path again, we know how good they can be. So you can't give up a game like the Colts, because with the way we've had struggles on offense, you're not necessarily going to get as many of those wins with the top-level competition.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for pointing out what to look out for next week. Hopefully it's another happy episode, another Victory Monday. Well, thanks for listening.
We'll see you next week.